As part of our Oxy-Fuel class, we're going to talk about properly setting up an Oxy-Fuel cutting set. Are there any questions about this before we get started? None? Okay. The first thing I wanted to talk about was PPE. So we want to make sure that we have our safety glasses on, and as well as, I'm going to wear some gloves here. Does anybody know what we call this green and red hose set?
Well, that's just your oxygen acetylene hose, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot of places call it twin well. So this is a twin well hose here. And then I also wanted to point these little guys out right here. Does anybody know what those are?
Isn't that a flashback arrestor?
Flashback arrestor. Now you got to be careful where you're working. OSHA doesn't generally say that you have to have these as a requirement, but a lot of places that you work, whether it be a company or a certain municipality or even a state, if it's a state-run OSHA, might require that you use these flashback arrestors. So you got to be careful. Here at the school, we do use them and require them. The first thing we want to do is anytime you're going to store the oxygen fuel setup, you want to make sure that it's got its caps on. I'm going to take these off right here. We'll set them right here. And you guys need to pay attention because following this little demonstration here, we're all going to go out in the shop and you guys are going to be required to set one of these up on your own. That is squeaky. All right. So the first thing we want to do before we put anything on is we want to crack the valves really instantly and close them back up. Why are we doing that?
To clear any dirt out of there.
That's exactly right, Jack. Thank you. That's exactly right. So after we've cleared the valves, as Jack said, to get rid of the dirt and anything that might be stuck in there, we're going to start attaching the regulator. Now, when we attach the regulator, there's a couple things you want to think about here. You want to make sure that this thread's on there all the way. Okay, by hand threading. I want to hand turn it on all the way. And we do that because we want to make sure that the threads aren't screwed up, damaged, fouled on the machine or on the regulator, because if they are, that could create a leak path. And now if I can get this one to start. There we go. One other thing I wanted to talk about too on the twin well hoses, on the red hose, which is the fuel hose, they've got little notches on them. Does anybody know why that is?
Different thread.
Yes, exactly right. On the acetylene hose, it has a left-handed thread, and on the oxygen hose, it has a right-handed thread. So you just want to pay attention to that. So after it has gotten threaded on all the way, we can then take the crescent wrench or adjustable wrench and just snug it up. You don't want to over tighten these, all right? Just want to barely put a little snug on it. Okay. Now we can start threading on the twin well hose. Now again, the fuel hose is going to be a left-hand thread, so you just want to make sure that it threads on all the way until it's hand tight. Paying attention to if you have any bad threads. These threads are just made of brass, so you just want to, if they have a bad thread on them, it's easy to foul that up, and you don't want to create a leak path, like I said before. So once I get those threaded on all the way, I can just, again, we're only snugging these up. Snug them up a little bit. Okay, that's good. Okay, so now we're ready to actually turn the oxygen and the acetylene cylinders on. How far do I turn an oxygen cylinder on?
Don't you just open it a crack?
No, oxygen cylinders you want to turn on all the way because this is a two-stage regulator. And a two-stage regulator needs full pressure behind it in order to work properly. All right, so the oxygen we're going to turn on all the way. And then what about acetylene?
one we cracked.
Yes, no more than a turn and a half, okay? And we do that only because, we don't, if we have to turn this off in a hurry, we want to be able to turn it off. Now, the other thing you want to think about is if you're working at a place that doesn't have a flywheel, has a special wrench attachment or something like that, a lot of the older acetylene bottles just had a square drive and they just have a T-handle that goes on there. You want to make sure, and this is an OSHA requirement, you want to make sure that that T-handle is always on the tank when you're using it, in case you need to turn it off in a hurry. All right, so we've got both of these on. I wanted to talk a little bit about ratios from oxygen to gas, and what did we use for a ratio on that? Does anybody remember?
5 parts oxygen to 1 acetylene.
5 parts oxygen, 1 part acetylene. So generally speaking, this changes depending on what you're actually cutting, thickness and metal, that type of stuff. Generally, I run about 8 on the acetylene and about 40 on the oxygen, which gives us that 5-to-1 ratio. All right, so lastly, what I wanted to talk about was checking for leaks. All I have here is a simple solution of soap and water. We're going to spray down every fitting. We can spray down the hoses. We can spray down up here. And what are we looking for when we do that?
Air bubbles.
We're looking for air bubbles. Air bubbles is going to signify that there's a leak in the torch set. All right, and then we'd have to fix it before we do that. The other thing one last thing I wanted to mention before we head out in the shop here today, guys, is that if a lot of times these twin weld hoses will become separated, all right, and that's fine. There's nothing saying that there's anything wrong with that, but you've got to be careful how you tape them. Okay, now it is allowable from OSHA to tape these hoses, but you can't put more than 4 inches of tape for every 12 inches on these hoses. So you want to make sure we watch out for that. And why is that? Does anybody know?
So you can check for leaks.
Yeah, if it's all taped up, how are you going to know if there's any leaks? All right, and that's quite simply it. Excellent, excellent. All right, with that, I think we're all going to head out in the shop right now. We're going to break down into teams, and you guys are going to take turns setting up the oxygen and acetylene. Thank you a lot.